UFC 296, Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington. Welcome to another UFC prediction and analysis video presented by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by Zan, I go by Harris as usual. Fight by fight breakdown and analysis from that betting perspective specifically. We want to let you know which fights are worth the value, which fights to avoid, which underdog has the best shot at winning, and some parlay action toward the end of the video as well. Please hit the thumbs up on this video. Please go to our channel at Boxing MMA Picks and make sure that you subscribe. And most importantly, when it's all said and done, we're going to want to hear from you in the comments. Now, for this UFC 296 pay-per-view event, it is taking place T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. We have 14 fights overall. 9 of them are going to be on the prelims, 5 of them on the main card. Let's get started with fight number 1 of our prelims. We're looking at Randy Brown versus Muslim Salikhov. Really good fight to get us started here in the welterweight division. Randy Brown, unanimous decision win over Wellington Turman back in June. We know he's long. We know he's tall. Does a lot of switch stance. Really tricky as a striker. Good long front kicks. Good long jab. Really dynamic and mixes it up well. He can also be explosive. He can also be quick with his combinations. He can also be really good with his movement. 11 of his 17 wins have been finishes. 6 of them KO, TKO, 5 of them submission. So he is pretty good as a finisher from that submission perspective specifically. Good at more of a niche rather than a danger per se. Really good at finding those guillotines. Really good at finding those rear naked choke opportunities. So look for that to always be a threat in his fights. Stylistically, very methodical, good IQ, stays pretty composed. Again, like I said, good movement, good timing as a striker. I would say his only red flag is his durability. I mean, firstly, we look at his record 17-5. 4 of those 5 losses were via finish. So always got to watch out for that with Randy Brown, especially going up against another really good striker in Muslim Salikhov. He lost to Nicholas Dalby back in June. He has good boxing, though, good kickboxing, pretty solid with the footwork. Not really the fastest, but does a good job staying at a range, does a good job staying at a danger. Uses fakes and feints, really tries to keep his opponents guessing, really sets things up pretty well. Good power as well. So of his 19 wins, 12 of them are via KO. Good striking IQ, doesn't brawl, doesn't really waste energy, but he can engage with his opponents if needed. In general, doesn't really engage proactively, so his work rate isn't always the best. We can see the significant strikes landed number per minute numbers on the screen there. Very much relies on his striking overall, so don't really expect a takedown game from him. I know we do see 1.31 per fight, but stylistically, he usually relies on that striking. Now, this fight, again, really interesting fight to get us started. I do think Randy Brown's takedown defense is good enough that this strike will be, this fight, I should say, will be a striking match. Like I said, Salikhov is capable of landing those takedowns, but Randy Brown does have some ability to defend it. I do think both guys are capable strikers to that point. I think both guys can have moments. I think both guys will have their moments. I think this fight can go in either direction in a lot of ways. So already that's going to tell you that there's value on the underdog, Muslim Salikhov. My prediction is going to be for Randy Brown, though. I mean, Salikhov, nearly 40 years old. Got to think that he's on the decline at this point. Sort of more importantly, Randy Brown, really key 4-inch height advantage in this fight, really key 8-inch reach advantage in this fight. I think that's going to work really well for him. I think neither fighter is necessarily a high-paced fighter, and I think that will work to Randy Brown's advantage. So my pick is going to be Randy Brown to get it done, but I would say don't be too confident in this one.
Yeah, this is a good fight to start the card with. We got Muslim Salikhov, karate guy, right? He wants to keep it on the feet. Dangerous guy in that first round, but as the fight goes on, cardio is a problem on his side. And as you mentioned, he's an old guy. He's 39. And this guy, if he was younger, I think it would be a more competitive fight. I think his only way to win this fight is if he lands like a big shot here. Randy Brown has been knocked out, but I think Randy Brown in this fight having a 6'3" versus a 5'11", So he has that reach advantage, he has that size advantage, and he has a good striking game. So he's gonna be able to fight on the outside and and he has a higher activity as well. So that's very important in this fight because he's gonna land more strikes than Salikhov. If Randy Brown survives that first round, Salikhov is gonna slow down, and his cardio, based on history, has shown that his cardio slows down after that first round. And Randy Brown has good cardio. I see him surviving that first round and winning the fight, like picking it up, winning the next 2 rounds, might even get a finish here. When it comes to the wrestling in this fight, the grappling, I think Randy Brown would be the one to get the takedowns, would be the one to initiate the wrestling exchanges. When it comes to the striking, I think Muslim Salikhov is a tricky striker with his kung fu. They call him the king of kung fu, right? So he has that really tricky kung fu style. He can definitely land something crazy, some highlight, but it's gonna have to be a highlight, right? And I'm not gonna bet on that, right? I'm gonna bet on the more consistent game from Randy Brown. That length he has, 6'3". He's gonna use that reach, kicks, punches. If he needs to get the takedown, he will. And the cardio is gonna be a big thing here. So I'm gonna go Randy Brown to get the win in the first fight of the card.
Fight number 2, we're looking at Martin Buday versus Shamil Gaziev. We have a heavyweight fight here. Martin Buday beat Josh Parisian back in August. He's 4-0 in the UFC now, 12-fight winning streak overall. Pretty decent with his stand-up. He stays in control, pretty tight with his hands, technically sound for the most part, all things considered, with it being the heavyweight division. He fights coming forward, closes distance really effectively, has a really solid jab. The combinations are there as well, and he can also play that decent sort of clinch dirty box type of game once he does close distance. He has really good stamina, and he's really durable, which is a real big advantage in this heavyweight division. But he's going up against Shamil Gaziev, who's making his debut, who fought in Dana White Contender Series back in September. He's undefeated. 7 of his 11 wins are via KO, TKO. He's a fast starter. He has big power, pushes that pace on you right away. Good wrestler as well. I mean, he's Dagestani, so he's going to look for those takedowns. He's going to look for those opportunities to chain wrestle, kind of get you to the ground by any means necessary. Top position is good. Ground and pound is effective. His problem, of course, of fighting at, a lower level of fighting is that he will tire out with that pace that he has. Takedowns do become much harder for him to land throughout the fight, and that activity will slow all the way down, becomes very sluggish at that point. Heavyweight fight, so I mean, that alone will tell you anything can happen. Stylistically, you are looking at striker versus wrestler type of matchup. Gaziev has that aggressive pace, like I mentioned, is good at landing takedowns, like I mentioned. But Martin Buday has 100% takedown defense, again, in the 4 UFC fights that he's been in. I will say I don't put too much on that 100% because he hasn't taken on someone who's capable of in the wrestling department the way that Gaziev is. So I mean, I do think that Gaziev has value. I think he can land a takedown early in the fight. I think he's capable of ending the fight shortly after that, the way he's done at the lower level. But I do think that Martin Buday is actually the much smarter pick in this spot. I do think his striking should be better, but mainly what it is for me, his stamina, his durability, I think is going to be the biggest benefit for him. So even if Gaziev clearly wins round 1, lands multiple takedowns, 10-8 type of round, I can see Gaziev just being way too gassed in round 2 and in round 3. And from there, Buday still having that stamina, being able to pull away with the striking advantage that he has, and then possibly ending the fight in his own right. So Martin Buday will be my pick for this one. From a betting perspective, it's a heavyweight fight. I want no part of it. But from a prediction perspective, I'll go Martin Buday.
Yeah, we got the big boys here. We got Martin Buday versus Shamil Gaziev. These guys are pushing the 265 heavyweight limit. Gaziev is a bit under. Buday's the big boy. He's pushing that limit 265, and it's gonna be a tough fight. Whenever you got heavyweights in there, where one shot could just end the fight. We can do all the research in the world, and all it takes is off balance shot and someone's knocked out. These guys pack power, and we got to keep that in mind when we try to predict this fight, because no matter what we say, it could be a situation where on the feet, someone makes a little mistake and one of these big boys land that uppercut or land that hook that ultimately ends the fight. That's the power these guys bring. But let me break this down regardless, right? So it's a tough one. These guys are similar in size. I think Buday's the bigger guy. Buday's the guy with the UFC experience, but let's look at that UFC experience. I like to break this stuff down, and when you look at the guys he's fought the lowest of low in the UFC against Chris Barnett, Lucas Brzezinski, Jay Collier, Josh Parisian. I'm sure we'll all agree these guys are the lowest. These guys are at the bottom of the UFC heavyweight division. And these other guys, Martin Buday is fighting, right? And when I look at Shamil Gaziev, even though he fought Darko Stozic in Brave CF, I think Darko Stozic is a tougher fight than those guys that Martin Buday fought. And when I look at the fight in terms of styles, they both have grappling. You're right, Buday has the cardio, but I believe on the feet, I think Gaziev's the more dangerous striker. I think he has that Russian wrestling as well. Again, I think he's going to come prepared here for at least 2-3 rounds. I don't think he's going to gas out in this fight. He has shown that he does have cardio issues. But aside from the cardio, I think he's the better guy. I think Buday is a slow, robotic striker. When you look at these heavyweights, how many heavyweight fights get to the third round, right? And this could be another one of those fights where the heavyweight fight ends early in that first round or the half of the second round. So I'm gonna go with the newcomer. I'm gonna go with the underdog, Shamil Gaziev. I think he's much more dangerous on the feet. I think when it comes to the grappling, I think they both have it. Again, Buday has shown he has better cardio, but I do think Gaziev is the better fighter, the more dangerous guy in a division where a lot of fights don't go to decision. So his cardio advantage, we might not even see it with these heavyweights where they don't last 3 rounds, right? So I'm going to go Shamil Gaziev getting an early finish. I'm going to go with the underdog in this spot.
Third fight of our prelims, Andre Fili versus Lucas Almeida. Andre Fili, unanimous decision loss to Nathaniel Wood. That was back in July. He finds himself in a lot of close fights in general, right? I mean, that is good from a competitive standpoint, but it's always concerning from a betting perspective. 10-8 in the UFC, so really a back and forth type of fighter. He is solid overall on paper. He has decent stand-up, he has decent wrestling, and lands takedowns at a decent rate. He has decent grappling to go along with it. Striking wise, good long jab, good active jab. Likes to march you down, come forward a lot, definitely willing to engage with his opponents. If he's taken down, decent scrambling ability. He's going to be one of those fighters that try to work their way back up or can keep themselves, pretty protected with their defensive guard. And again, like I said, he can land takedowns and try to implement that ground game offensively, ground and pound, landing points, different things like that. So really just one of those fighters, no glaring weakness to their game. Probably doesn't do any one thing amazing either. And of course that has led to sort of mediocrity throughout his career. But nonetheless, going up against Lucas Almeida, he lost to Pat Sabatini back in June. Solid striker with some pretty decent punching power, swings heavy, especially early in the fight. 100% finish rate amongst his 14 wins, 9 TKO, 5 submissions. Like I mentioned, the pace is really good. He wants to be that fighter putting that pressure on you. He wants to be that person that's going to try to close distance effectively, going to throw multiple strikes at a time to try to do it. Going to be that proactive fighter rather than ever playing that counterpuncher role. I will say again, he's effective on the feet, but takedown defense could use some work. First of all, don't expect him to land takedowns, but again, that takedown defense can use some work at just 40%. I think this fight, good spot for Fili, although you can never be too confident in an Andre Fili fight. I think you're looking at a fight where their striking should be at least as good as each other's. I think whereas Fili should have the much better ground game. Again, 2.2 takedowns per fight, for Andre Fili, 40% takedown defense for Lucas Almeida. So I'm really looking no further than that. Lucas Almeida definitely has value as an underdog in this spot. I mean, again, good power, good striking, good pressure in his style. But I like Andre Fili for having more ways to win the fight. So I do see why he's the favorite. He will also be my prediction to get it done, Andre Fili.
Yeah, this is a good fight for the fans. This whole card, UFC really is putting on a show here. A lot of competitive fights, and this is another one. When you look at Fili, he definitely has the wrestling advantage. At 33 years old, um, he's done it all in the UFC. He's fought the who's who in this division. His wrestling is going to be his advantage in this fight. Is grappling. One thing though with the grappling is he's not able to keep these fights on the mat. So guys are able to get back up. And I'm not sure Andre Fili is going to want to do the wrestling approach with Lucas Almeida. I think this is going to be a striking fight for some reason. I think these guys are going to stand up most of the fight. And in a stand-up fight, I got to go with the more dangerous guy. The guy I think is more dangerous. The guy I think is more the guy I think can take better shots. Fili, I think, is sort of like glass at this point. I think a guy like Lucas Almeida can land a heavy shot here. Fili can't take these shots, and he's shown it in these past couple of performances, getting knocked out. And he's fighting another striker. I think Fili, for him to win, he's got to go in there with a 3-round wrestling approach. I think on the feet, if he doesn't, which I think he's going to keep it on the feet, and I think Lucas Almeida is going to hurt him. I think Lucas has the more accurate striking. Fili might be faster, but what does Connor say? Precision beats whatever he said. Timing beats speed, right? And I think Lucas Almeida has that timing. I think he has that accuracy. I'm gonna go Lucas Almeida, another underdog here, to get the win in this spot.
All right, fight number 4 in that case, Tagir Ulanbekov versus Cody Durden. Flyweight fight here. Ulanbekov beat Nate Maness. That was 13 months ago at this point. He's introduced as a wrestler and as a grappler. The striking is also pretty good. It's clean. He can control center. He can put that forward pressure on you. The jab is solid. Going to use it really often. Pretty decent as a counter puncher as well. Calf kick looks good. And again, really good at closing distance. Look for him to shoot for takedowns once that distance is closed. He has that sort of that strong smothering Russian style of wrestling, and again, really a good grappler. Like I mentioned, he's introduced as 8 of his 14 wins via submission. Cody Durden's on a 4-fight winning streak. On the other hand, he beat Jake Hadley back in August. Pretty good win for him, and looking pretty good lately. He's introduced as a striker. That's always interesting. I wouldn't really consider him to be a high-level striker necessarily. I do think his calf kicks are looking pretty good lately. I do think he picks his shots a lot better than he did in the past. And I like his pace. His movement's looking better as well. A lot of in and out movement. Solid wrestling. We already know that with Cody Durden. Has that sort of chain wrestling style to go along with it. Good top control, pretty relentless with it in terms of trying to maintain that top control or trying to control your back or just finding ways to score points. And definitely improved cardio with Cody Durden. I mean, again, he's been fighting, really well over this winning streak. It looks like he brings that, improved toughness to the table, improved cardio to the table. And he offers that sort of same striker wrestler style that Tagir Ulanbekov does. So I mean, really, it's just about who's going to bring it more in this fight. Who is stronger? Who is better with the wrestling? Who is better with the transitions? Who is better with the grappling? Unfortunately for Cody Durden, I don't think this is a good matchup for him because I look at Tagir Ulanbekov as being slightly better, at least, than Cody Durden pretty much in every area. I do think Cody Durden has value, has the better takedown defense on paper, has the same offensive tools that Ulanbekov does. But Ulanbekov ultimately is going to be my pick here because I believe that he's simply the higher level fighter. So I'm going to Tagir Ulanbekov to get it done.
Yeah, this is a great one. you got what, Russia versus the USA, and Tagir Ulanbekov, one of those guys from the Khabib camp, and good wrestler, good wrestler. I think his best chance to win in this fight is getting some type of submission, like a guillotine. Um, I don't think he's gonna be able to dominate with his wrestling, but I can see him countering Cody wrestling with some type of submission, like jumping on a choke and winning the fight that way. These guys, you have to understand these guys on the Khabib team, man. These guys are Sambo fighters. These guys, they have that wrestling, they have that submission, that they have that striking, they have that full game. That's what they've been training. And a guy like Cody who has that high level wrestling, that USA college wrestling style. His striking is getting better, but you got to believe that in a full on fight, Ulanbekov is more prepared, I think. But when I look at Cody Durden, I see improvements in his striking. I think Cody Durden actually has the better wrestling in this fight. I'm going to say it. I think this USA guy has better wrestling than one of Khabib's guys. Right. And a lot of times when you see these Khabib guys fighting, you ultimately think that they have the wrestling advantage. And I don't think Tagir is going to have the wrestling advantage in this fight. As well, the cardio. Khabib guys are known for that cardio, but I think Cody Durden may have the better cardio in this fight as well. And when I look at the striking on the feet, I gotta like Cody's striking. It's improving every fight. I think he's the better striker in this matchup. I think if he keeps it on the feet, he should be able to box up Tagir, do a lot of damage on the feet. And again, I really think he has the better wrestling. So he should be able to get takedowns if he wants. He should be able to defend whatever takedowns Tagir has. I think he is the stronger guy physically. And with his wrestling skills, I think he has enough to keep it on the feet. So I'm going to go with the underdog once again. I'm going to take another underdog. I think this is the first time I've ever done that, 3 times in a row. But I'm going to go Cody Durden here to pull off the upset.
Fight number 5 of our prelims, the end of the early prelims. We're looking at Alonzo Menifield versus Dustin Jacoby. Menifield beat Jimmy Crute back in July. Decent overall movement, a lot of level changes, some in and out movement, especially early in the fight. Look for a higher level of technique from him earlier in the fight. He's going to keep his hands up defensively. We know that he has that touch of death power, but also really effective with his jab. Look for him to be that fighter coming forward, or at least trying to. A bit of a stalking style in some ways. Has a strong clinch. We know he's physically strong. Has good wrestling, or at least from a strength perspective. Has that strength, has that physique. There's a lot to like on paper with Alonzo Menifield, but of course we know his biggest concern historically has been his cardio tank. Dustin Jacoby, on the other hand, beat Kennedy and Nzechukwu. That was back in August. Really methodical striker, crafty switch stance type of style. He trains with Chris Gutierrez, for example, right? So you think about that type of style, Dustin Jacoby really does a lot of those same things. Pretty good boxer, pretty good kickboxer. He's going to chip away with those kicks, good accuracy, good usage of the jab, very patient, good movement, and also really good at playing that counterpuncher role. His calf kick has given some opponents problems to the point of training with Chris Gutierrez. And interestingly to note with him, 12 of his 19 wins via KO TKO. A lot of it is from accuracy, accumulation, and speed, as opposed to him being like a touch of death kind of guy as well, right? So I think we're looking at a really interesting fight. I think we're looking at, in some ways, a pretty unpredictable fight. We see the odds really in the favor of Dustin Jacoby, and I absolutely understand why that is. I think on one hand, you do have Dustin Jacoby as the cleaner striker, as the higher level technical striker throughout this fight. On the other hand, you have Alonzo Menifield probably as the bigger, more dangerous striker. I do like Dustin Jacoby. I think he's the smarter pick in this fight, again, to the point of being a favorite. I think it just comes down to striking prowess. I think he strikes at a higher pace, a more consistent pace. I think that cardio of his can be a lot more reliable than Alonzo Menifield's. And although he doesn't necessarily have one punch power, his KO percentage is the same as Menifield's, right? So he's just as capable of ending the fight, like we saw him in his last fight do. And Menifield can gas out, and when you gas out, you can get hit. And when you get hit, of course, the fight can be over. So I think Dustin Jacoby is the much smarter pick here. My pick will be for Dustin Jacoby.
Yeah, I'm going to be fairly quick on this one. I think Dustin gets it done, man. Listen, Dustin had a tough fight against Azamat Mirzakhanov, but he's going to show that that guy's no joke. And the Khalil Roundtree, who looked really good this past Saturday, let's be honest, Dustin won that fight, and Dustin Jacoby got robbed in that fight. Menifield, again, he can get some takedowns, but he doesn't have enough to keep it on the mat. He doesn't have that top game. On the feet, I think Dustin Jacoby's just gonna mix it up too much, right? Because when you look at Menifield, his striking is mainly the hands, right? And Jacoby mixes in the leg kicks, the elbows, the knees, the overhands, the uppercuts, the boxing. He brings more to the table in the striking, and it's going to show, right? I really like Dustin Jacoby. I think this is a parlay piece that you can put in on your tickets. Aside from some ridiculous highlight knockout, Jacoby here should get this one done. So I'm going to go Dustin Jacoby to get the win.
Fight number 6 of our prelims. Let's talk Casey O'Neill versus Ariane Lipski. Casey O'Neill, unanimous decision loss to Jennifer Maia. That was back in March. She has pretty good MMA striking. Trains out of Thailand, decent hands, decent kicks, puts a good constant pressure on her opponents with constant pace in her attack. I wouldn't say she has, I wouldn't say she's a high-level striker necessarily, but she's pretty dynamic. She's pretty effective. I mean, again, good jab, good straight punch, good at really enforcing and being the enforcer. She also has wrestling, pretty good with her top control, smothers her opponents, good ground and pound, good activity. Also good from the bottom if she's taken down. She does have a solid clinch, 1.96 takedowns per fight to the point of her wrestling. And she's a fighter who's going to look really composed in that fight at all times, doesn't really get too flustered, even in moments where she's getting hit. And that's always a good thing from a composure perspective. Ariane Lipski had a split decision win over Melissa Gatto back in July. She's a striker. We know she has hands. We know she has power. She can put good combinations together, likes to fight coming forward. Her takedown defense definitely looks improved, 78% on paper at this point. She's also landed 3 takedowns in her last 2 fights, which is very interesting. Cardio has been a major red flag for her in the past, but that's also something that has looked vastly improved over her past couple of fights. So she's someone who is all of a sudden becoming a bit more reliable as she gets into her athletic prime at 29 years old. I think that Lipski has value for sure in this spot as an underdog. She has knockout power, like I mentioned. And again, most importantly, she's showing that she can last multiple rounds now. I think with Lipski, it used to be just survive round 1 and you're good. She's showing that she can, really be dangerous for multiple rounds now. I still like Casey O'Neill in this spot. However, unlike Lipski's last 2 opponents, Casey O'Neill's not going to allow Ariane Lipski to come forward, mainly because she's going to try to do the controlling of that forward pressure and pace on her own end. Casey O'Neill also lands 2 takedowns per fight, so I think that she can land a takedown or 2 in this one. I think it'll be a competitive fight, especially with Lipski looking good lately, and O'Neill coming off of a loss. So that makes it a lot more interesting for sure. But I think that Casey O'Neill is going to be equipped to get it done here stylistically, forcing the forward pressure, forcing the clinch, forcing the takedown, really testing that improved cardio of Ariane Lipski. And again, as opposed to her last 2 opponents, Lipski's cardio is not going to be as easy to maintain with fighters that weren't really pushing the pressure on her. So I think Casey O'Neill gets it done. Again, stylistically, she has the advantages, so she will be my prediction.
Yeah, this fight, I think. Remember, Casey O'Neill was being talked about as the next, as like a future contender in the UFC. She lost that last fight against a jiu-jitsu fighter in Waya. Kind of got exposed, but she didn't really go to her game. That wrestling game, that top control game, that ground and pound. She was kind of scared of the black belt in Maya. I think this is a completely different fight stylistically. I think in this fight, she's gonna go for the takedowns, and I don't think she's gonna have issues getting the takedowns. If she keeps it on the feet, the fight will look close. It can go either way. Lipski is going to be the more dangerous striker with the more potential to land that ending blow that could turn the fight upside down. Right, Lipski is more likely to do that, but if O'Neal gets that grappling going, I think she's going to make it look easy. I think people are forgetting that this girl was going to be the next one, right? The next contender. She's looking really good using that wrestling. And in this fight, she has a big advantage with that grappling. So I'm going to go with Casey O'Neal. She lost her last fight, but I think this is a good bounce back fight for her against a fighter that can't really defend the takedowns, that can't really keep up the cardio. I like Casey in this spot to get the win.
Fight number 7 of our prelims, Cody Garbrandt versus Brian Kelleher. Good bantamweight fight here. Garbrandt unanimous decision win over Trevin Jones back in March. He's an effective striker. He's quick on the feet, good movement, good quick hands, fights from a good range, explodes in when he needs to. Historically has not had the best IQ, at least in the past. But I mean, to that point, we know that he likes to find himself in situations where he's brawling, usually ends up on the losing end of it. But he's, making improvements to that, and he's not always putting himself in those situations anymore because he's knowing that it's costing him. He has wrestling ability. 2 takedowns landed in his last fight, for example, but doesn't really have that cardio to keep up with that type of style. Historically, his cardio has not been the best. When he does get tired, that's when that IQ comes down. That's when he kind of goes shots for shot. So red flags with Cody Garbrandt, but still someone who is a high level striker. Going up against Brian Kelleher, who's on a 2-fight losing streak. He lost to Mario Bautista. That was 18 months ago. He's tough, decent stand up, definitely willing to engage. Really good left hook, decent calf kick to go along with it. Now, I wouldn't say he's the highest quality striker, but he is one of those people that can hold his own. Movement pretty solid as well. Got to respect his power, got to respect his finishing ability. Of his 24 wins, he has 18 finishes, 8 of them KO, TKO, 10 of them via submission. From a submission perspective, he likes that guillotine specifically, so Garbrandt definitely got to be careful with those takedown attempts. And in general, I don't think Kelleher is a strong wrestler per se, but won't hesitate to at least attempt it. You see the takedown numbers there at 1.79 per fight. All of that, I'll keep this pretty short. I think Cody Garbrandt should be a good pick here, although I would never trust him too much to actually bet on him. Kelleher is an average striker. Kelleher is not a wrestler. I don't think there's really any way for Kelleher to win this fight outside of a puncher's chance. I do think a puncher's chance is possible against someone like a Cody Garbrandt. But Garbrandt's last opponent, Trevin Jones, he also had that puncher's chance, and Cody was able to manage that well. Cody was able to pretty much nullify it, right? So I think that he will be able to manage it for this fight as well versus a Brian Kelleher who is relatively less dangerous than a Trevin Jones. So I think Cody Garbrandt should just be too high level of a fighter. Still 32 going up against a 37-year-old in Brian Kelleher. I'm looking at all advantages leaning in Cody Garbrandt's favor. So Cody Garbrandt will be my pick to get it done.
Yeah, this is a big fight, right? And when you look at the fight, to ultimately break it down, Cody Garbrandt is a better fighter. He's the better guy, skillfully everywhere. Maybe not the jujitsu, but he is better everywhere. When you look at Kelleher, this guy is good everywhere, but he's not a specialist in every area. So he's going to be dangerous because Cody, we know, has a glass chin. This guy can't take a shot. And Cody, I think Kelleher has the power to knock him out. So I'm definitely not going to bet this fight because I think the better guy is Cody Garbrandt, but I also think that his chin, you can't really put your money on. You're just going to get pissed off. And if he gets hit on, if he gets a shot in his face, he can get knocked out. So I'm gonna go with Cody Garbrandt being the better guy. But as far as betting goes, I'll stay far from this because I wouldn't be surprised if Cody gets knocked out. Kelleher's game. This guy is a vet. This guy can strike. This guy can wrestle. He's not the best, but it doesn't take the best to land a good shot, especially on a guy like Cody Garbrandt. You can't really trust him. But I'm gonna go Cody Garbrandt for the channel. But as far as bets go, staying away.
Fight number 8 of our prelims, Irene Aldana versus Karol Rosa. Aldana unanimous decision loss to Amanda Nunes back in June. She's a striker. She has good lateral movement. She's light on her feet. Her jab is pretty good. Her calf kick is pretty good. In general, she's a pretty good boxer. And stylistically, really quick hands. Just a good overall striker as well, and really good striking IQ. She has really good power, especially, for this women's division. 8 of her 14 wins are via KO TKO, which is very impressive. Good chin as well. She does have good solid head movement defensively. She is, willing to engage with her opponents. She will absorb some shots, but again, very tough. 75% takedown defense on paper, but gave up 9 takedowns in her last 2 fights. So that is something that could potentially be relevant here as she takes on Karol Rosa, who beat Yana Santos via split decision back in July. She has solid stand-up, Muay Thai style. She stays in the pocket. She's going to use a solid jab. Also uses a pretty solid calf kick in her attack. She can strike first. She can also play that counter puncher role. She can put good combinations together, but also, again, has that more patient approach to her striking as well. And she can also land takedowns. Solid on top, good activity, strong ground and pound as well. Can also play that clinch game, control you against the cage, kind of score points in that way. I think there's real value on Karol Rosa here. I think she strikes at a slightly higher pace. I think she puts on a forward pressure. I think she lands more takedowns. Aldana should absolutely be the higher level striker, and that may be the only thing that's relevant in this fight. She historically has had good takedown defense, although not lately. So I'm going to be curious to see what that looks like for this one. And she's simply taken on the much higher level of competition in comparison to Karol Rosa. Aldana definitely feels like the smarter pick in this fight. I feel like her striking is just much better, but I don't know. I don't know what it is about this fight. Something in my gut is telling me to go with the underdog Karol Rosa here. I think it'll be takedowns that make the difference in this fight. I think we've seen multiple fighters use those takedowns against Irene Aldana in Irene Aldana's losses. And she's getting up there in age now at 35 years old, right? So I'm thinking to myself that maybe not as capable as stopping that takedown. Karol Rosa, 28 years old, getting better every fight, getting into her athletic prime, maybe being able to land those takedowns, maybe being able to do that for at least 2 rounds and somehow finding a way to get a decision in her favor. I think if nothing else, Karol Rosa has value as an underdog. But from a prediction perspective for the channel, I'm also going to predict that the underdog Karol Rosa gets it done in a really statement victory for her.
Yeah, this fight, Irene Aldana, they got her as the favorite. She's gonna have the striking advantage, or should have that advantage. But it's mainly a boxing approach, right? And she's really good in the striking area. She's fought for the title in her last fight, but she's getting up there in age, right? She's 35, and Karol Rosa has been coming along, right? In her last fight, who was her not her last fight, the fight that she lost versus her fellow Brazilian. What's her name again?
Norma
Here, she got
Dumont.
her name there. Norma
Norm.
Dumont, right? And yeah, and that was a fight that I picked Norma Dumont. But when you really watch that fight, the fight can go either way, right? It was a close fight that could have gone either way. And Norma Dumont is high level, right? She's a skilled fighter, a fighter not to be messed with, who's usually a favorite. And she handled it really well. So this fight, when I look at the styles, with the boxing heavy style from Aldana, she's really good movement, lengthy with the striking. But Karol Rosa mixes up the kicking, has the overhands, so she does have a bit of boxing. She has the kickboxing with the leg kicks, the takedowns. Um, I think this is a fight that can go either way. We know how women's fights go. A lot of these fights are very competitive, unless one fighter can take it to the mat and dominate on the mat. I don't think that's if that happens. I think it's going to be done by Karol Rosa. So if this stays on the feet, I think Karol Rosa can hold her against the cage, get a lot of points against the cage. I think she could be physically stronger in some of the clinches. So I'm going to go with the underdog as well. I'm going to take Karol Rosa here in this spot. I just think she has a bit more tools, right? So, and I think she mixes them up really well. And I think this is a fight that could be a passing of the torch. Aldana is really old and not really old, but she's 35. Rosa's the younger girl. I'm going to go with the younger girl in this spot here to get the win.
All right, let's finish off the prelims here. Fight number 9 of our card. We're looking at Josh Emmett versus Bryce Mitchell. Really good prelim, feature prelim here. This would be a main event on a fight night. So you're getting a really good card here on this pay-per-view event. Josh Emmett versus Bryce Mitchell. Emmett lost to Ilia Topuria back in June. Fairly straightforward with his striking, but he is a good striker. He has good power. He has decent movement. Likes to come forward, wants to be that fighter closing the distance, look for big shots out of him, big combinations out of him. He's aggressive, but he's also very patient, doesn't force that aggression. Underrated punching speed is something I will give him as well. Really tough, always willing to engage with his opponents. Going to be one of those fighter that's, willing to take one to give one type of idea, and really just sticks to the striking. But from a wrestling perspective, he was a college wrestler. So he does have some accolades there, but I wouldn't really rely on that in the UFC. Just 46% takedown defense and less than one takedown landed per fight. So I don't really put too much stock into that part of it. He's taking on Bryce Mitchell, who had a unanimous decision win over Dan Ige back in September. His stand-up is okay. Good forward pressure, decent striking, decent counter jab. Specialty is definitely his ground game. 9 of his 16 wins are via submission specifically. He has really good takedowns, 3.5 takedowns per fight, has that chain wrestling approach to his style. He's relentless on top. He's going to incorporate that really good grappling to stay in advantageous positions. Body locks, body triangles, things like that. Things to kind of really just suck the life out of you and really win the round, right? Mitchell is fighting on short notice here, but a 10-day notice. So I think that's going to add a really interesting layer to this fight. Interestingly enough, Bryce Mitchell is still a very sizable favorite despite just a 10-day notice. I think you're looking at a clash of styles, Emmett as the striker, Mitchell as that wrestler grappler. And I want to think that Emmett has value as the striker, has value as the underdog here, because again, with that striking advantage that he has, he can hurt Bryce Mitchell. And again, Bryce Mitchell fighting on short notice here, he may not be as sharp as he needs to be. But just stylistically, I can't ignore 46% takedown defense from Josh Emmett. I think it's too much of a factor in a Bryce Mitchell fight. Bryce Mitchell, we know he goes for it. He's someone that's really intentional about it. And Mitchell, I can see him landing takedowns in all 3 rounds, right? Mitchell's just really relentless with it. Emmett, I don't think is going to have an answer. I don't think he's going to be able to defend it. Plus the age. Haven't even gotten to the age yet. Josh Emmett, 38 versus Bryce Mitchell, 29. Again, it's been kind of the theme of the card. 28, 29 is when that fighter really enters their athletic prime. So Bryce Mitchell may only need 10 days notice to win an easy one here with the wrestling. As long as he avoids that striking danger, which is a real danger on the side of Josh Emmett. I think just stylistically, we're looking at a fight where Bryce Mitchell is just going to incorporate the takedown again and again. Bryce Mitchell is going to be my prediction for this one.
Yeah, Bryce, man, he's pretty much shown that this guy's grappling is like super high level, super high tier, and if he can get this fight to the mat, Emmett should have a hard time, right? And Bryce is favored for a reason, but I'm gonna go with the underdog once again in this spot, man. I think this is a fight that I definitely wouldn't bet because I definitely see Bryce. I could see how Bryce is the favorite. I understand the advantages he has on the mat, but I've never really seen Emmett get destroyed on the mat. I've never seen Emmett get taken down and held down for 3 rounds. He has a really good get up game. Even if you get him taken down, he gets right back up on the feet. He's gonna have a big advantage on the feet against Bryce Mitchell. Bryce Mitchell can't strike. Strikes it's low level, right? And Emmett, if it stays on the feet, Emmett has some of the heaviest power of all time in that division. So I wouldn't be surprised Emmett knocks him out. But this is a fight I'll stay away from as far as betting goes. But I do think there's a lot of value on the underdogs. So I'm going to go with the underdog here, Josh Emmett. Um, Again, I wouldn't suggest going out there betting it, but what I would suggest is not putting Bryce Mitchell on all your parlays because I think there's a good shot he gets knocked out here. So I'm going to go Josh Emmett to pull off the upset.
All right, let's move on to our main card. We have 5 fights on the main card. Let's start with fight number 1, Vicente Luque versus Ian Garry. Starting with Vicente Luque, unanimous decision win over Rafael dos Anjos. That was back in August. Constant pressure coming forward, but very calculated. Doesn't really force his attack. He has a good jab. He has good hands in general, and a really good calf kick. Really just good overall striking. The technique is clean, the combinations are clean, the power is there, the clinch is there as well. He has a good ground game. He can land a takedown per fight. I would say stylistically very much prefers the game on the feet, but landed 8 takedowns in his last fight, right? So, very much a veteran enough to know how to incorporate that in his game. Just 62% takedown defense to go along with it. I don't think that will matter in this fight. Going up against Ian Garry, who is very much a striker. Ian Garry beat Neil Magny back in August as well. He has quick hands, he has good movement, has a good long jab, has good quick kick, quick kicks. Great striking speed, great striking accuracy with good technique. Fights off of that back foot a bit, but really good footwork. Has sort of a bit of a stick and move type of style. Really sharp combinations, really good striking IQ. The timing is there. And he's shown that he's been able to handle pressure fighters with that outside movement that he incorporates stylistically. The takedown defense, not great, just 69%. Very much a striker. But interestingly enough, he landed 2 takedowns in his last fight. So maybe Vicente Luque's takedown defense is relevant in this fight. I don't think the takedowns on either side are going to be relevant for this fight. So I think we're looking at a striking match. I think each fighter should be able to fight their style. Luque as that fighter coming forward, Garry as that sort of stick and move type of style. I think Luque absolutely has value here. Very big underdog in this one. Has value for sure. But I think you just have to go with Ian Garry on this one. Although he's at a 1 inch reach disadvantage, I think his style and I think him being the taller fighter, I think it's going to allow him to be effective in that outside fighting stick and move type of approach. Vicente Luque, he takes a lot of hits, whereas Ian Garry, big gap between what he lands versus what he absorbs. So I think that's going to play a role in who's winning each round, who's landing more points, who's winning the striking numbers. And I mean, let's face it, we know Ian Garry is one of the UFC's biggest prospects. So even if it is a close round, it's more than likely going to go in Ian Garry's way, right? So I think all of those different things are factors for this fight. Plus, it's only a 3 round fight, so no real opportunity to drag Ian Garry into deep waters that he hasn't seen before. So I think Ian Garry, I think he gets it done. I think he's just going to prove to be continually proving that he's ready for the challenge, and I think he gets another win under his belt.
Yeah, this is I like this fight. This is a good fight, and when I look at Vicente Luque, I was one of his biggest fans, right? Until he had this big meltdown. Bilal Muhammad was able to piece him up. Jeff O'Neill like almost murdered him in the cage, on the feet, right? And he looked really bad in those striking exchanges with Rafael dos Anjos. He turned into Randy Couture, had to do a lot of wrestling in that fight. Ian Gary's gonna I think Ian Gary's gonna run away with this. I think on the feet, Luque has shown that he can no longer hang with these guys on the feet. And Garry is probably a better striker technically than most of those guys. Jeff O'Neill, it's arguable, it's close, but yeah, Gary's probably the better striker than all those guys. He's gonna have a hard time here if he doesn't get this to the mat. He's gonna get pieced up on the feet. He's shown that he's just not on this level of striking that Garry possesses. Gary's gonna fight at range, use that 1-2, throw the kick here and there, get the timing down, counter. This is a fight made for Garry to win. So I'm gonna go with Ian Garry here. I'm not gonna drag this out. I think Ian Garry is the better guy right now. I think he's gonna get this done. And I think this is a parlay piece that you can use on a lot of your tickets.
Second fight of our main card, Tony Ferguson versus Paddy Pimblett. I know a lot of people had this one circled on their calendar for a while. Good lightweight fight here, intriguing lightweight fight. Tony Ferguson, 6 losses in a row at this point. He lost to Bobby Green back in July. 39 years old. I mean, definitely past his prime, right? But still effective. A lot of switch stands, still very unorthodox, still good combinations, still has that sort of borderline capoeira style on the feet, which presents timing problems for his opponents. His hands are still accurate. The power is still there. He's still dropping guys. And we know that Tony Ferguson is always going to be a really good grappler, especially if he's put on his back, which potentially could happen in this fight. Paddy Pimblett had that unanimous decision win over Jared Gordon. That was 12 months ago. Of course, we know that fight infamously known for having pretty much everyone picking Gordon as the actual winner of that fight, despite Pimblett getting the decision. That could be really important for this fight, by the way, from a decision perspective. But nonetheless, Pimblett, solid on the feet, not amazing. I would say he has a decent calf kick. He fights from the outside. He's going to use those kicks in general to kind of keep range. Doesn't want to engage too much unless he has to. Striking speed is there. The counter punching is there. He can be explosive. And again, really go toe for toe and kind of test the toughness. But in general, he's a ground specialist. He has good grappling. He has tight top control, has really good submission attempts, has really good ground and pound. Got to respect the chin, got to respect the heart, got to respect the ability to be the aggressor when he needs to let the hands loose when he needs to. His ability to finish. I mean, with what he's shown us in the UFC so far. That said, keeps that chin up and really makes himself hittable and still makes a lot of mistakes. Many things line up to predict Pimblett to win this fight. Ferguson being on a massive losing streak, being well past his prime, 39 years old versus 28. Again, theme of the card with those 28 and 29-year-olds. Paddy being a good grappler, being a submission threat, being a submission expert, versus Tony being submitted by Bobby Green in his last fight. And again, the momentum from a judging perspective, as Paddy Pimblett, of course, is at least one of the most popular prospects in the UFC. So again, you can definitely make that case that Paddy Pimblett gets it done here, and you can definitely understand why he's the favorite. I have to go Tony Ferguson mainly because I don't believe in Paddy Pimblett as a legitimate prospect. We have to think about Pimblett not landing a single takedown in his last fight versus a Jared Gordon that has 62% takedown defense. And we got to think about Paddy Pimblett giving up 3 takedowns in his last fight and having just 56% takedown defense in his own right. I think we have to think about Paddy Pimblett being hittable, making mistakes, leaving his chin up against a Tony Ferguson who still has legitimate power. And even without a knockdown on the side of Ferguson, I think we have to think about Pimblett just not being a high level striker in general, though he can be okay and he can be effective. I think there's enough doubt on the favorite side to roll with the underdog here from that value perspective. You got to think about how fired up Tony may be. Another opportunity to get a win for the first time since 2019. I'm sure he's on some of his final fights. This is a winnable spot for him. hey, maybe he wins and then finally retires after that. So I'm gonna go with Tony Ferguson on this one. I think there's enough doubt to roll the dice, especially for the value that he's giving. Wouldn't suggest betting it, but from a prediction perspective, I'm gonna go with Tony Ferguson.
Yeah, I almost went Ferguson as well, man. But I'm going Paddy Pimblett because Ferguson, when you look at Ferguson, when he fought Nate Diaz, he won at least a round in that fight, maybe two, right? He, the fight was pretty close, right? So he definitely had Nate Diaz confused at certain points in that fight. And when you look at his fight versus Michael Chandler, that first round was pretty close, right? And when you look at that fight, these are against top ten guys. And Tony Ferguson, he lost what, three, four, five, six fights in a row. But he won at least a couple rounds against these guys, and those six guys he's fought are all killers, are all beasts. And in this fight though, what made me go with Paddy Pimblett was I just don't see any fight, man. If this guy gets hurt, gets taken down, I don't see much fight. He wants to get back up, but it seems like he's just not ready, man. At this point in his career, he's over the hill. I think Paddy Pimblett, as bad as he is, I don't like betting on this guy, but at some point, Paddy Pimblett's going to get him in a position on the mat, get his back, choke him out. I just don't see a fight in Ferguson once he gets in those positions, and even on the feet, Ferguson's chin is not the same. He's not the same tough guy, and Paddy Pimblett, as bad as he is, I think he can land some shots here. And once he gets to the mat, I think he's going to get a finish here. So I'm going to go Paddy Pimblett here to get the win. I don't like betting on this guy, but I'm just not. I don't like the fight from Ferguson when he's in trouble, and I think Paddy Pimblett here. I think the UFC wants him to win. I think this is a winnable fight for him. I think he gets it done.
Third fight of our main card, Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Stephen Thompson, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Rakhmonov, the biggest favorite on this card at minus 725 at this point. Rakhmonov undefeated, 17-0, 5-0 in the UFC. He beat Jeff Neal. That was back in March. Pretty good on the feet, good distance control, good active head movement. The footwork is there, the in and out movement is there. The calf kick is pretty effective. His stand-up in general is really calculated, really relaxed. A lot of fakes and feints, good boxing in general as well. He has a strong clinch, 100% takedown defense as well. Won't be relevant for this fight, but always good to know. His background is combat sambo, right? So gonna have the good grappling, gonna have the strong takedown ability, gonna have the great top control to go along with it. And he has a 100% finish rate. We look at it even in his time in the UFC, 4 submissions, 1 TKO in his 5 UFC fights so far. Stephen Thompson beat Kevin Holland. That was 12 months ago at this point. Karate side stance, so a lot of calf kicks. Gonna fight at range, really good movement. Often he's a hard target to hit. His hands stay down, but he's gonna use that to, be really sneaky in his offense, be a sneaky counterpuncher, be, just effective with his movement, especially when he's moving backward. He can land that without his opponent seeing it. Really fast, still has really good speed, still has really good striking speed, still has really good movement around the ring. But he is 40 years old, right? So you always got to ask when time will catch up. 12 months ago, he proved that, he's still very much here. I will keep this really short, though. I'm Rakhmonov all day, pretty much, in this spot, regardless of the threat that Stephen Wonderboy Thompson could be in this fight. I think just like Rakhmonov's last fight against Jeff Neal, I think his total skill set is just going to make him too much for Wonderboy and make him a pretty comfortable pick for this fight. He is composed as a striker. He's good as a striker. I'm not saying he's better than Wonderboy, but he is a good striker. I think the clinch from him, the takedowns from him, the overall MMA skill set from him. I don't think Wonderboy's style is going to be equipped to handle that. So I mean, technically there's value on Wonderboy because it's still Wonderboy at the end of the day, but I feel pretty comfortable picking Shavkat Rakhmonov in this spot.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I'll make it quick. I like Rakhmonov in this fight, Shavkat to get it done. Let's be honest. Steve Thompson, he's 40 years old. He looked good against what was that guy's name again, man? He looked good against let me bring that fight up against Kevin Holland. But this is a completely different fight. Shafkat is gonna take him to the mat, and Shafkat's not gonna have a hard time with the wrestling. And on top, he's just gonna finish this guy. I like Shafkat to get it done here. I think he gets a finisher in this spot.
All right, let's talk co-main events. In that case, we have a championship flyweight title fight here. Alexandre Pantoja taking on Brandon Royval. Pantoja split decision win over Brandon Moreno back in July, of course, to become the flyweight champ. He marches forward often. He's a bit flat-footed, but that plays into his striking style with that Muay Thai. Throws big power into his shots. He's really aggressive coming in, really explosive with his combinations, nasty kicks, not afraid to engage with his opponents and really make it a war. Also going to look for that grappling, really strong as a grappler. I'm going to look for those sort of body lock opportunities right away, try to get on your back right away. And again, a really high level grappler to go along with that to kind of put you in danger right away. We see the takedown numbers there at almost 2 takedowns per 15 minutes. Landed 6 takedowns in his last fight, for example. So we know that that can be an effective weapon for him. And just in general, I mean, he's the champ, so it's not, surprising to say this, but just a high level overall fighter. He's hungry. He's going to be one of those fighters that brings it, whether he wins or loses, fights for your money. Always want to see that, and of course, that has brought him to championship status. Brandon Royval is on a 3 fight winning streak, beating Mateus Nicolau back in April. Royval's very dynamic. He's a southpaw, but he can switch stance and uses that to the point of being very dynamic. Combinations are there, the kicks, the hands, the movement, a lot of in and out, a lot of fakes and feints. Has good, consistent, high level of activity as well. He's actually introduced as a brawler, so not afraid to exchange with his opponents. A little bit weak in the takedown defense department, just 39%, but he's going to be one of those fighters that are very active on their back. Good jujitsu, good submission defense. Won't quit early, won't tap too early. You really gotta beat him to beat him. Otherwise, he's gonna make it a fight for sure. I think this is anyone's fight, just based on how aggressive both guys can be, just based on it being a title fight, based on it being a co-main event, based on it being in front of a crowd. I think Pantoja's championship fight answered any questions that you could ask about his aggressive style and the ability to actually fight 5 rounds with that style. I'm not saying he didn't tire out at all in his championship fight, but the 5 rounds he was able to be effective. He was able to last. He was able to win late rounds, and he was able to, again, put that title in his favor. Either way, 5 rounds may actually not matter in this fight because, again, both guys willing to go to war right away. Somebody probably gets finished within the first 2 rounds. That would not surprise me on either side. Now, analytically, I like Pantoja in this spot. Pantoja has that force forward attempt takedown type of style. And Royval has just 39% takedown defense. So that tells you the blueprints of the entire fight for as long as it lasts. Now, in terms of the striking, I think it's anyone's fight. You're looking at 2 guys that are aggressive, dangerous, dynamic, high level from that regard. Ultimately, though, more reasons to like Pantoja from that analytical perspective. So I like Pantoja to keep his title here. Alexandre Pantoja will be my pick.
Yeah, this fight, man. When I was going with my heart, I was on the Royval side. I think something's telling me this guy's gonna get the win. This guy looked really good in his last fight. On the feet, the striking, I think he's the more dangerous guy. I think as long as the fight's on the feet, this guy's live for some type of dangerous strike, some type of finish ending strike. And on the grappling, obviously, I like Pantoja. I like Pantoja's approach. I like that Pantoja is able to get the takedowns in this fight because it's not going to be defended by Royval. He doesn't have that good takedown defense. So my heart's going with Royval. I think my heart's saying this guy's going to get the title. This guy's going to land something crazy. And we've seen that happen many times in these championship fights, but I got to go with my head in this fight. This fight, I like Pantoja to show his 5 rounds. He's gone 5 rounds in wars. He's gonna have a grappling advantage in his last fight against Moreno, and in that fight, Moreno, who has good grappling, Pantoja was able to get some takedowns. So you can imagine the amount of takedowns he's gonna be able to get in this fight. So I got to go with Pantoja. I really think the takedowns are going to dictate the winner in this fight. And once he gets it to the mat, I wouldn't be surprised he gets a finish with strikes or a submission. So I'm going to go Pantoja here to get the win.
Let's move on to our main event of the evening. In that case, we have Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington. Of course, welterweight title on the line for this one. Leon Edwards majority decision win over Kamaru Usman back in March. He had a point deducted from him in that one, just FYI. Dynamic and quick on the feet, really good movement, quick hands, good combinations. Also very smart with his striking. Going to use those fakes and feints, going to use good timing, going to find his openings, going to manage distance really effectively, and also showed a really effective calf kick, especially in that last fight of his. He's physically strong. He's underrated as a wrestler. We see that he does have some takedown ability, 1.25 takedowns per 15 minutes. Just 69% takedown defense, though, which will be very relevant for this fight as he goes up against Colby Covington, who beat Jorge Masvidal. That was 21 months ago at this point. Going to be one of those fighters who can do it all at a high level. I mean, he's a perennial contender. He has good activity on the feet. He has good movement. He has good fakes and feints. I'm not going to consider him to be a high level striker by any means, but he has good striking diversity, good combinations, and good timing as a counter striker. Not afraid to go toe to toe with his opponents with that striking. We know he has unlimited cardio. That's always going to work well for him in 5 round settings. But his strength, of course, is that world-class wrestling that he has over 4 takedowns per fight, almost 50% from the accuracy side of things. Pretty much the only guy to land, or no, I guess Leon Edwards landed a takedown on Usman as well. But before that, Colby Covington was the only guy to land one, even though it didn't officially count. But nonetheless, in terms of prediction, main event, that's going to already tell you anything can happen. Title fight, that's already going to tell you anything can happen. Clash of styles, that's going to tell you anything can happen. I'm looking at this fight in a similar light as a Sean Strickland versus Israel Adesanya. Now, of course, I predicted Izzy in that fight, so I'm not, this is very much an after the fact type of claim, but I'm looking at or I'm thinking about Leon in the role of Izzy, the technician, versus Covington in the role of Strickland as the guy who will relentlessly put on pressure. In this fight, it'll be Covington repeatedly resorting to that wrestling, right? Leon just 69% takedown defense, like I mentioned. That probably won't be good enough to stop Colby from landing takedowns. What Leon will have in his favor is he's bigger, he's physically stronger. So we're gonna have to see if that protects him from Colby Covington being able to take him down. Odds are it won't protect him because again, Colby Covington is a high level wrestler. Leon will be the much better striker in this fight, though. Being taller, being longer with that effective distance control, it can make it really hard for Colby Covington to come in and to work his way in and to even attempt those takedowns, right? So we're looking at a lot of stylistic components in this fight that could go either way. Like we saw in Colby Covington's last fight, going up against the striker in Jorge Masvidal, there was some initial hesitancy in trying to work that takedown game. But one thing that he will continue to do is he will continue to push the pace no matter what, right? I think that's going to be the key X factor in this fight for Colby Covington. I think it's going to really test Leon Edwards' stamina. And I do think Colby Covington is more durable than Leon Edwards. I think Colby Covington has a real shot here. Real shot to win the belt. I think it'll fit perfectly into the UFC agenda. If Colby Covington gets it done here, I think Covington has enough of a shot to actually swing my prediction in his favor as well. Just the more I think about it, I think about a Covington versus Masvidal style of fight. I know Leon Edwards is a much more capable striker at this point in their careers. Much more dynamic with his movement, much bigger physically as well. Definitely cannot ignore those factors. But I think the way the fight will look with Colby just forcing his way in, working those takedowns, being able to land a takedown, being able to implement top control, and really just wearing on the gas tank of Leon Edwards to a point where he won't have much to offer afterward. I think just the possibility of that is real with Colby Covington's style versus Leon Edwards' style. So again, like I said, I think enough of a value to actually swing my prediction in his favor as well. So my pick is going to be Colby Covington to become welterweight champ.
Yeah, I definitely see it, man. Colby Covington proposes a hard matchup stylistically. If he can keep that pressure on, that 3 rounds, kind of like he did to Jorge Masvidal, definitely he can cause problems. He can win this fight, right? And well, you got to look at Masvidal though, right? I think Leon Edwards could take him down for like 3 4 rounds if he wanted to wrestle. I don't think Masvidal against the bigger guys in the division, especially these guys that can wrestle. I don't think he can really defend the takedowns. In this fight though, stylistically though, I definitely see your point of view, but but I'm gonna go with the Leon Edwards here. I think Leon Edwards gets it done. I know the UFC wants Colby to get the win here, but I do think Leon has made big improvements with the wrestling, and he knows he's fighting Colby, who's going to come with that relentless pace. Like you said, Leon is the bigger guy, so it's gonna be harder to take him down when he's the stronger guy. And on the feet, the shots he was getting from Masvidal, I think Leon Edwards would find more openings. I think he's going to find a lot of openings in the striking. Colby, he does wrestle a lot, but he definitely thinks he can strike, and I think that's going to hurt him in this fight because on the feet, I think Leon's too smooth, too quick. I think he's going to do enough to keep it on the feet, and I got Leon Edwards here retaining the title here. But again, yeah, I definitely see Harris's side. I definitely think this is a fight that Colby, if he implements that Marab pace, that pace and tires out Leon as the fight goes on. I could see if that happens. Credit to Colby for getting that done, for breaking Leon. I think that is a path, breaking him down over 3 rounds with a relentless grappling pace. But I do think Leon's going to be able to defend it. I think he's going to be able to do enough to keep it on the feet. And I think on the feet, I think he's going to hurt him. So I'm going to go Leon Edwards here to retain his title.
All right, let's wrap things up by taking it to Vegas. Let's consider some underdogs. Let's consider some parlay action as well. Of course, let's start with an underdog pick. I will start by reading them out. So Muslim Salikhov is an underdog against Randy Brown. Shamil Gaziev is an underdog against Martin Buday. Lucas Almeida is an underdog. Cody Durden, Alonzo Menifield, Ariane Lipski, Brian Kelleher, Karol Rosa, Josh Emmett, Vicente Luque, Tony Ferguson, Stephen Thompson, Brandon Royval, and Colby Covington.
Okay, underdog pick of the week. I'm gonna go with I actually had a lot of underdogs this week. So I'm gonna choose Cody Durden.
Cody Durden as the underdog. And in terms of my underdog, I'm going to take it to the main event. I'm going to look at Colby Covington as my underdog pick. And then in terms of sort of parlay action or favorite picks, what are you considering?
Okay, favorite picks. I like okay, favorite picks. I like Ian Machado Garry. I like Shavkat Rachmanov. And I like okay, this is out of two. This is out of Randy Brown or Dustin Jacoby. I'm gonna go with Dustin Jacoby to get the win.
All right, so those three fights, Ian Garry, Shavkat Rakhmonov, Dustin Jacoby, that'll be a 2.07. That means that $100 will return a total of 207 for our bigger bettors. $250 will return a total of 519. In terms of my favorite picks, I'm only going to remove one from the screen here. I'm going to remove Jacoby because I'm also going with Ian Garry. I'm also going with Shavkat Rakhmonov. My third pick, a little bit of controversy in terms of how this prediction video has gone so far because it actually goes against your underdog pick. So I'm looking at Tagir Ulanbekov as my third pick on that parlay. Those three fights, Ian Garry, Shavkat Rakhmonov, Tagir Ulanbekov. Those three fights would be $100 to return a total of 239. And for our bigger bettors, $250 will return a total of 599. So let's end off on that note. This has been UFC 296, Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington. Full card prediction video presented by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. Please subscribe to the channel. Please hit the thumbs up on this video. And most importantly, we want to hear from you in the comments. How do you feel about our picks? How do you feel about a lot of picks going against each other this week for the first time in a while? Let that all be known in the comments, and we're more than happy to have extended conversations with you as needed. But officially signing off, UFC 296, Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington. Full card prediction video. He goes by Zan. I go by Harris in our usual fashion here at Boxing MMA Picks. Let's get this money.
Let's get it.